Why Pink? It's just a name. It's just the name of the band.
What you're about to watch is the inside story of one of the greatest bands in rock history. From the real meaning behind their most iconic songs, to the secrets hiding in their best albums, the unheard recordings and studio accidents that shaped their sound, and the mysterious moments even die-hard fans never knew. This is Pink Floyd, like you've never heard before.
He was on stage, numb, disoriented, injected with a tranquilizer, forced to perform. And that's when the line hit him. Just a little pinprick. This is not just a song. Comfortably Numb isn't just Pink Floyd's most iconic track. It's a cry for help, a reflection of trauma, disconnection, and collapse. But you were never told the full story until now. In 1977, Pink Floyd were in the middle of their Animals tour. It was called In the Flesh, and behind the scenes, Roger Waters was falling apart, paranoid, exhausted, disconnected from reality. Just before a show in Philadelphia, a doctor injected Waters with a tranquilizer to get him on stage. He later said he watched himself perform like a ghost, a puppet, physically present, emotionally gone. That moment became the inspiration for Comfortably Numb.
Are you aware that Comfortably Numb is the most played Pink Floyd song?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I didn't know that.
Come on now.
In the United States, since 1980, it has been played 330,000 times.
Hey, what stage of the game is the character Pink for the track Comfortably Numb?
After Bring the Boys Back Home, there's a short piece where there are tape loops used as the teacher's voice heard again, and you can hear the groupies saying, "Oh, are you feeling okay?" And there's the operator saying, I can't remember, and it's a man answering all those things. And there's a new voice introduced at that point, and there's somebody knocking on the door and saying, "Come on, it's time to go." Right. So the idea is that they're coming to get him to take him to the show because he's got to go and perform that night. And they come into the room, and they've realised something's wrong, and so they actually physically bring the doctor in. And Comfortably Numb is about his confrontation with the doctor.
So the doctor puts him into such a physiological condition that he can actually hit the stage?
Yes. He gives him an in fact, it's very specific, that song.
Just a little pinprick?
Yeah.
There'll be no more ah.
Right.
To understand the numbness, we have to go back even further. Roger Waters' father died in Second World War when Roger was 5 months old. He never knew him. He grew up surrounded by absence, raised by a quiet, grieving mother in post-war England. The Wall isn't just an album. It's a metaphor for emotional isolation. And Comfortably Numb is the moment when the wall becomes total. As the song was integrated into Waters' conceptual scheme, which Gilmour later admitted he found a bit whinging, early versions like The Doctor show the grittier sound Gilmour wanted. This take also showcases some lyrical howlers. I am a physician. Who can handle your condition? Like a magician. That, thankfully, didn't make the final cut. Gilmour wanted the Floyd version of the song to have a harsher edge, even though the demo featured beautiful acoustic strumming. Waters, however, desired a loud, dramatic sound. In an interview with Absolute Radio at the top, Waters recalls that the dispute came down to a rhythm track, and the negotiation process entailed assembling verse and chorus fragments from two distinct versions. Originally, a sparse demo from Gilmour's debut solo album Songwriting Sessions in 1978, The song only came complete with Waters' words during sessions for the epic album. The Wall. The following year, there is a solid reason why Pink Floyd retrospectives frequently turn into reenactments of the arguments between Roger Waters and David Gilmour. This creative and personal conflict gave rise to some of the band's greatest songs, particularly their most well-known single, Comfortably Numb, which, as it exists now, was a compromise between two opposing ideas. In contrast to Lennon and McCartney, for example, who produced some really good music apart, Gilmour and Waters never achieved the same level of success as when they were together.
David thinks he owns it. I think he thinks that because I left the band in 1985, that he owns Pink Floyd, that he is Pink Floyd.
Gilmour acknowledged that Comfortably Numb symbolizes the last embers of mine and Roger's ability to work collaboratively together, which adds to its bittersweetness.
Had nothing to really, I'm irrelevant, and I should just keep my mouth shut.
Understanding the background of Comfortably Numb helps us to understand all of the scheming that went into making the song what it is today. Comfortably Numb is more than pain. It's also beauty, and that beauty came from David Gilmour. While Waters wrote the lyrics from a place of trauma, Gilmour created the melody, the soaring guitar solo, and they fought over it hard. Waters hated Gilmour's version at first. Gilmour refused to compromise. The song nearly didn't make the album. Producer Bob Ezrin stepped in.
And it was made very clear to me by Roger at the beginning that he really, he fancied himself being Pink Floyd. He was Pink Floyd, and the others, he referred to them in not the most flattering terms.
He stitched together Waters' despair with Gilmour's transcendence.
And he just said, the reason I need you is because you're going to deal with them. I can't deal with them anymore.
And that's how magic was born. Comfortably Numb was born from breakdown. Childhood grief. A syringe before a show.
In many ways, I got that band to play together and be together and create together and do really great stuff.
Two creative titans at war. And yet, it became something eternal. The sound of emotional disconnection, wrapped in one of the most beautiful solos ever recorded.
And do you stay in touch?
With Roger?
Yeah.
No.
Not at all, eh?
No, sadly no, because, part of me really loves the guy. And I really loved working with him.
The Wall was conceived during a turbulent period for Roger Waters, who found himself disillusioned by fame and estranged from his audience. The album tells the story of Pink, a fictional rock star whose life events beginning with his father's death in Second World War, school trauma, overprotective parenting, and the superficiality of rock stardom lead him to build an emotional barrier. In this narrative, Comfortably Numb arrives after Pink collapses before a show and receives a sedative, literally rendering him comfortably numb to the world around him. Waters later penned the lyrics to fit Pink's story, capturing that clinical sedation. Hello? Is there anybody in there? Just nod if you can hear me. Is there anyone home? The blend of Gilmour's melodic sensitivity with Waters' stark, existential imagery creates the song's unforgettable tension. The recording sessions took place at Super Bear Studios in France and later at Abbey Road in London. Gilmour's pristine lead vocals on the choruses. Warm, empathetic, almost pleading. Contrast with Waters' detached, almost mechanical verse delivery. Producer Bob Ezrin suggested that Gilmour sing the choruses, while Waters handled the verses, sharpening the divide between the numbed patient and the outside world attempting to break through.
And Roger had said to me, the band's over. Like, I quit and the band is finished. So I thought that was it.
Perhaps the most celebrated aspect of Comfortably Numb is its two guitar solos. The first, concise and melodic, eases you into Gilmour's universe. But then comes the second solo. A breathtaking 11-line ascent of pure emotion. Gilmour's use of string bends, phrasing, and lyrical note choices crafts a solo that feels like a voice crying out from behind the wall. In fact, in 2008, Guitar World readers voted this the greatest guitar solo of all time. Released as a single in 1980, Comfortably Numb didn't top the charts. It peaked modestly in the UK and US, but it became a fan favorite and a live staple.
Now that we've uncovered the deeper meaning behind their biggest hit, let's explore the album that changed everything and the secrets behind it that few know.
Imagine this. One long, wordless scream rips through Abbey Road Studios. No melody, no lyrics, just pure emotion. The voice belongs to a 25-year-old session singer named Claire Torrey. 45 seconds, 30 quid. And suddenly that scream is the beating heart of an album that'll sell 45 million copies. An album that spent 741 weeks on the Billboard charts, longer than some artists' entire careers. From a one-take vocal performance that changed music history, to antique clocks, pub interviews, and a lawsuit that took decades to resolve. Today, we're opening the vault to reveal the secrets behind the making of the dark side of the moon. By May 1972, Pink Floyd had already played the suite live for months, calling it Eclipse before it grew up into the dark side of the moon. Pink Floyd were already known as pioneers of psychedelic rock, but they were drifting. Endless experimental jams, half-finished ideas, and a lack of direction threatened to leave them behind as the rock world moved forward.
We were in danger of not getting the balance quite right, between the words and the music.
Roger Waters came up with a solution, an album built around one unifying theme: the pressures of life and the madness it can cause. That concept would tie the songs together. Time, money, war, death, and insanity. This vision gave the band purpose, and what followed at Abbey Road Studios would become one of the most innovative recording sessions in history. One of the most unforgettable moments on the album is the great gig in the sky. But here's the secret. It was never supposed to be a centerpiece. Initially, it was just Richard Wright playing a piano piece about mortality.
I'm very proud of this piece as a musician and the way the chord structure works.
In that January 1973, at the last minute, producer Alan Parsons brought in a 25-year-old session singer named Claire Torrey. She was told, "Sing as if your voice is an instrument. Don't use words. Just feel it."
That was what was remarkable about her performance on that. She just improvised away and no words, just wailing.
What happened next was lightning in a bottle.
And I thank Claire Torrey for that magic day when she put the voice on.
In one take, Torrey delivered a raw, wordless cry of anguish that captured the fear of death better than any lyric ever could.
I went up to Abbey Road. I had no idea what it was. Nobody told me. I didn't know whether I was going to walk into the studio. There was going to be a choir, 2 other girls, 3 other girls. No idea.
She walked away thinking she'd failed. Instead, she created one of the greatest vocal performances in rock history. She was paid just £30.
Today, I just can't believe the effect it has on me and I guess everyone else.
Only in 2004, Torrey sued for a co-write and won, finally claiming royalties from the 45 million selling album. Claire Torrey settled her lawsuit with Pink Floyd and EMIs for an undisclosed sum in 2005. While the specific amount was never revealed, the out-of-court settlement recognized her claim that her improvisational, wailing vocals on The Great Gig in the Sky effectively constituted co-authorship with keyboardist Richard Wright. The settlement also awarded her vocal composition credit and a share of future songwriting royalties. Her net worth is today estimated at $10 million. The iconic sounds on the dark side of the moon weren't created with synthesizers. They were painstakingly recorded. For the song Time, Alan Parsons went into an antique shop and recorded every tick, clack, and chime from a shelf of ancient clocks, one after another. Later, he stitched the best 24 ticks across 4 machines, each slightly detuned, into a multi-track loop that became the song's eerie intro. For money, Roger Waters took an ordinary cash register, tore paper, jingled coins, and created a tape loop in 7/4 time. That rhythmic loop wasn't just a gimmick, it became the heartbeat of the entire track.
And I've always believed that's the best Floyd music has come from that, actually.
These sounds weren't samples or presets. They were built by hand, with scissors, tape, and hours of trial and error. Throughout the album, strange voices appear, laughing, confessing, or muttering cryptic lines. Where did they come from? The band set up microphones in Abbey Road's studio hallways and interviewed anyone who happened to be around. Roadies, engineers, staff, even the doorman. They were asked the same questions. When did you last hit someone? Are you frightened of dying? What's the dark side of the moon, anyway? The answers were unscripted and deeply human. Henry McCullough, guitarist for Wings, said, "I don't know, I was really drunk at the time." Another voice, from roadie Roger, the Hat Manifold, laughed about fighting. And at the end of Eclipse, you hear a faint voice saying, "There is no dark side of the moon, really. As a matter of fact, it's all dark." It is coming from studio's Irish doorman, Jerry O'Driscoll. He also said, not included on the album, "The only thing that makes it look a light is the sun." Paul and Linda McCartney were also interviewed, but their answers were not used as the band thought they were trying too hard to be funny. Waters cherry-picked the rawest snippets and sprinkled them across the album. It wasn't poetry written by Waters. It was real people, caught in unguarded moments. The album also broke ground technologically. The band used the EMS Synthi AKS and VCS-3 synthesizers, some of the earliest portable synths. On the track On the Run, David Gilmour never touched a guitar. Instead, he punched a frantic 16-step pattern into the built-in sequencer, cranked the thing through tape delay, and rode the filter knob like a pilot, wrestling a 747 in a hurricane.
This was a new version that had one of the very first sequencers in it.
That was the big innovation, was that the Synth EA had a sequencer, which was just the first sequencer I'd ever seen.
The quadraphonic mix, essentially an early attempt at surround sound, let the band move effects around the listener. In concerts, the sound of footsteps or planes could race across the audience from speaker to speaker, years before surround systems were common. The band wasn't just writing music, they were building a sonic world. They mixed the album on Abbey Road's brand new EMI TG 12345 console, the building's first solid-state desk. Cleaner headroom meant the low end on the On the Run could thunder without muddying the delicate highs. Parsons spent whole nights riding faders by hand so the mixers breathed. When the mastering engineer cut the lacquer, he had to widen the grooves to cope with the seismic bass. Yet the quiet passages remained so intimate, you feel someone whispering in your ear. Half a century later, the record still sounds like it comes from next week. When The Dark Side of the Moon was released in 1973, it wasn't just another record. It was a cultural event. It gave shape to universal fears and experiences, from birth to death, using sounds no one had heard before. And maybe that's why it still resonates, because behind the perfect production lies the imperfect, the accidents, the arguments, the raw human voices. That's the real secret of The Dark Side of the Moon.
But there's more beneath the surface. Next, a forgotten Pink Floyd album that almost slipped through history's cracks.
Did you know that Pink Floyd recorded an entire album you were never meant to hear? And the reason behind it? A dangerous Mexican road race that killed 27 drivers and spectators. This is the story of Pink Floyd's lost soundtrack, and why it never made it to your record collection. In 1991, Pink Floyd wasn't on tour. They weren't recording. Instead, 3 members were about to risk their lives on one of the deadliest road races in the world. Guitarist David Gilmour, drummer Nick Mason, and their longtime manager Steve O'Rourke, all serious gearheads, decided to enter one of the world's most dangerous vintage car rallies, the Carrera Panamericana. But they didn't just do it for fun. They filmed the entire adventure, and in the process, created an entire Pink Floyd soundtrack for it. This isn't just a story about a lost album. It's about a band's creative spirit, finding an outlet in the most unlikely of places. But this passion project nearly ended in disaster. To really get the album, you first have to get the race. La Carrera Panamericana is not your average Sunday drive. It first ran in the early 1950s to celebrate the opening of the Pan American Highway in Mexico, and it quickly got a reputation for being brutally hard and incredibly dangerous. 27 drivers and spectators were killed in the first 5 years, spanning thousands of kilometers on public roads, often through treacherous mountain passes with unpredictable conditions. The original race was a magnet for the world's best drivers, and a spectacle of pure speed and chaos. It was so perilous that it was cancelled after just 5 years. When the race was revived in 1988 for vintage and classic cars, it kept its legendary status and its spirit of high-risk adventure. This was the event that called to Gilmore, Mason, and O'Rourke. Nick Mason, especially, is a well-known and respected driver in historic racing, with a car collection that would make a museum curator weep. For these rock stars, it was a chance to swap the stage for the driver's seat. So, the decision was made to film their adventure, and a film starring members of Pink Floyd would, of course, need a Pink Floyd soundtrack. And here's the craziest part. Some of these songs are among Pink Floyd's last true collaborations. So why, in the early 90s, did this project grab their attention? You have to remember where Pink Floyd was at the time. They were coming off the massive success of the A Momentary Lapse of Reason album and its world tour, which had re-established them as a stadium-filling powerhouse, even without Roger Waters. After the tour wrapped in 1990, the band took a much-needed break. There wasn't any immediate pressure to record a new album. David Gilmour was now the clear leader, and keyboardist Richard Wright was, for the first time since the mid-70s, back in the creative mix. The whole vibe was different from the tense, conflict-filled sessions of their later years with Waters. There was a feeling of freedom, of friendship. The Carrera Panamericana project wasn't a calculated career move. It was a passion project. It was something they could do together, outside the immense pressure of creating the next official Pink Floyd studio album. It was basically the perfect side quest for a band that had just finished conquering the world and was figuring out what to do next. The race itself was every bit as dramatic as its reputation. Nick Mason and his co-driver, auto racer Valentine Lindsay, were impressively skilled, finishing 8th overall. David Gilmour's experience was a lot more harrowing. During one stage, he crashed his car. While Gilmour was okay, his co-driver and band manager, Steve O'Rourke, suffered a broken leg. The crash was a stark reminder of the real danger involved. That whole raw experience, the adrenaline, the speed, the danger, and the stunning Mexican landscapes became the backdrop for the music. In November 1991, the band went into Olympic Studios in London to record the soundtrack. The film's score is a fascinating mix of existing Pink Floyd tracks and brand new music. Songs from A Momentary Lapse of Reason, like Signs of Life and Sorrow, were woven into the film. But the real gold for fans are the original instrumental pieces written just for the documentary. And these weren't just David Gilmour solo tracks. Songs like Pan Am Shuffle and Carrera Slow Blues were credited to Gilmour, Wright, and Mason. This was a huge deal. It was the first time Rick Wright had gotten a co-writing credit on a Pink Floyd song since Wish You Were Here back in 1975. And for Nick Mason, while he had received a credit on Signs of Life a few years earlier, this was a return to collaborative songwriting, not seen since The Dark Side of the Moon. After years of being sidelined, the original members were jamming again, laying down these atmospheric, bluesy, and powerful instrumentals that were a direct reflection of the race, sprawling, cinematic, and totally driven by Gilmour's soaring guitar. With all this fantastic new music featuring the reunited core of the band, the obvious question is, why wasn't there ever an official soundtrack album? The film itself came out on VHS and Laserdisc in 1992, so it was commercially available, but a standalone album never appeared. To this day, the only official way to hear these unique tracks is by listening to the audio from the film, though bootlegs and fan-made compilations have been circulating for years. There's no single, simple reason why the album was shelved. It was likely a mix of things. First, the music was made specifically for the film. It was meant to score the visuals of the race, not to be a standalone studio album. Gilmour might have felt it was too specialized or incomplete for a major commercial release. Second, the creative energy from these sessions quickly rolled into a much bigger project, the recording of what would become 1994's The Division Bell. The positive experience of jamming on the Carrera soundtrack was probably a perfect warm-up, proving that the three of them could still create powerful music together. Once they shifted focus to a full-blown Pink Floyd album, the smaller soundtrack project was likely pushed to the back burner. And finally, there could have been tricky rights and licensing issues tied to the film that made a separate album release too complicated. Whatever the reason, it was left in the archives, becoming a holy grail for die-hard collectors. Listening to the La Carrera Panamericana tracks today is a fascinating experience. The music is a perfect bridge between the polished 80s sound of a momentary lapse of reason and the more expansive, collaborative feel of the Division Bell. The new stuff is almost all instrumental, letting Gilmour's guitar take the spotlight. Carrera Slow Blues is just what it sounds like, a moody, evocative blues track that shows off the incredible chemistry between Gilmour's guitar and Wright's keyboards. Pan Am Shuffle is more upbeat and driving, perfectly capturing the feeling of freedom on the open road. You can literally hear the seeds of the Division Bell being planted here. The atmospheric textures, the focus on instrumental jams, and the obvious chemistry between Gilmour, Wright, and Mason all point directly to the sound they would perfect on their final studio album. The Carrera soundtrack is more than just a weird little one-off. It's a vital piece of the band's evolution in their final chapter. It's the sound of a band rediscovering its creative spark, not in a recording studio, but through the shared thrill of a wild adventure. Of course, La Carrera Panamericana isn't the only ghost in the Pink Floyd machine. The band's history is full of legendary what-if projects. Probably the most famous is Household Objects. After the insane success of The Dark Side of the Moon, a creatively exhausted Floyd tried to record an album using no traditional musical instruments. They used things like stretched rubber bands, aerosol cans, and wine glasses. After weeks of frustration, the project was scrapped, though some of the sounds they created ended up in Shine on You Crazy Diamond. Then there was Spare Bricks. This was originally going to be a soundtrack for the 1982 film The Wall, with re-recorded versions of songs and unused material from the album sessions. But that project got derailed by Roger Waters' growing obsession with the Falklands War, and it eventually morphed into the 1983 album The Final Cut. And even the sessions for the Division Bell produced their own lost album. The band recorded hours of ambient instrumental jams that their engineer, Andy Jackson, compiled into a single, hour-long piece he called The Big Spliff. For 20 years it sat in the vaults, until Gilmour and Mason revisited the tapes and used them as the foundation for Pink Floyd's final album, 2014's The Endless River. Each of these lost projects tells a piece of the Pink Floyd story. But La Carrera Panamericana is unique. It wasn't born from creative burnout or fighting within the band. It was born from a shared joy, a passion for speed, and a spirit of adventure. It's the sound of a band reconnecting. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The film and its music are a fascinating snapshot of a moment in time, a glimpse into the lives of rock royalty who chose to risk it all on the dusty backroads of Mexico. It shows that even for a band as legendary and well-documented as Pink Floyd, there are still stories hidden in the margins, still roads to explore, and still a legendary soundtrack that never quite made it to the record stores. It just goes to show that sometimes the most interesting journeys are the ones that take an unexpected detour.
And then came a studio accident, one that would unknowingly shape the band's most unforgettable sound.
It's 1971, and David Gilmour is alone in Abbey Road Studios, frustrated and exhausted. He's been experimenting with effects for hours, trying to create something, anything, that could capture the otherworldly atmosphere Pink Floyd desperately needed for their new album.
Often doesn't really work quite that way in the studio. It's not down to a musical rapport between us.
His fingers are cramped, his ears are ringing, and in a moment of careless fatigue, he makes a simple mistake. He wires his wah-wah pedal backwards. What happens next would accidentally create one of the most haunting and recognizable sounds in rock history.
But we are very into sort of timeless, ageless, spacious sort of moods in our music, very often atmospheric.
A sound so perfect, so ethereal, that it would define not just a song, but an entire era of progressive rock.
But we'd used this same trick before on echoes.
This is the story of how a studio accident became Pink Floyd's greatest sonic achievement. The year 1971 was make or break for Pink Floyd. They had just lost their founding member and creative genius, Syd Barrett, and the pressure was mounting to prove they could survive without him. Roger Waters was pushing the band toward more conceptual territory, while Gilmour was still finding his voice as the new lead guitarist.
Playing with these sort of rhythms and sounds on stage at sound checks, probably in the late 60s, but I never quite found where to use it until Echoes.
The sessions for what would become Meddle were tense, experimental, and often frustrating. Gilmour had always been a perfectionist, spending countless hours tweaking his sound, searching for that perfect tone that would set Pink Floyd apart from every other band of the era. He was known to arrive at the studio early and stay late, often working alone with just the engineer, exploring the possibilities of his equipment in ways that would have seemed impossible to previous generations of musicians. The wah-wah pedal, a relatively new piece of technology at the time, was supposed to create that classic sweeping sound that had become popular in the late 60s. When wired correctly, it would start with a low, muffled tone and sweep upward to a bright, cutting sound as you rocked the pedal forward. But Gilmour, in his tired state, had connected the wires in reverse. When he first struck the chord and began to rock the pedal, instead of the familiar wah sound, something completely unexpected emerged from his amplifier. The effect was inverted, creating an ascending pitch that sounded nothing like a guitar. It was high, piercing, and strangely organic. It sounded like the cry of a seagull, or perhaps some mythical sea creature calling across an endless ocean. But this wasn't actually the first time this sound had appeared in Pink Floyd's work. If you listen carefully to their earlier experimental piece, called Embryo, recorded during sessions in February 1970, you can hear the earliest version of this effect. Gilmour had been experimenting with the backwards wiring even then, but it was during the Meddle sessions that he truly perfected it and understood its potential. The seagull effect, as it came to be known among the band and their engineers, became the centerpiece of Echoes. But creating the final version wasn't simple. Gilmour spent weeks perfecting the technique, learning exactly how to manipulate the pedal to create different types of calls and cries. He discovered that by varying his picking attack, his finger vibrato, and the speed of the pedal movement, he could create an entire range of sounds that seemed to tell a story without words. The emotional impact of this accident cannot be overstated. When you listen to Echoes today, those seagull cries don't just provide atmosphere. They provide the emotional heart of the piece. They represent longing, isolation, the call of something wild and free. They transport the listener to wind-swept coastlines, to vast empty spaces, to moments of profound solitude and beauty. What makes this story even more remarkable is how it reflects the creative process of Pink Floyd as a whole. This was a band that never settled for the conventional, never accepted that things had to be done the way they had always been done. They were constantly experimenting, constantly pushing boundaries, and most importantly, they were always open to the happy accident, the unexpected discovery that could transform their music. The backwards wah-wah effect became so integral to Pink Floyd's sound that Gilmour continued to use it throughout his career. You can hear variations of it on The Dark Side of the Moon, on Wish You Were Here, and even on his solo albums decades later. But it was never quite the same as those original seagull cries on Echoes, created in that moment of exhausted experimentation in 1971. This accident also reveals something profound about the nature of creativity itself. Some of the greatest artistic breakthroughs in history have come not from careful planning or deliberate intention, but from mistakes, accidents, and happy coincidences that open up new possibilities. The backwards wah-wah effect is a perfect example of how technical limitations or errors can become creative opportunities in the hands of an artist who is truly listening. The impact of this single mistake rippled far beyond Pink Floyd. Countless guitarists and musicians heard those seagull cries on Echoes and began experimenting with their own equipment, looking for their own happy accidents. The effect influenced everything from ambient music to film soundtracks, and you can still hear its influence in contemporary music today. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this story is how it captures the essence of what made Pink Floyd special. They weren't just musicians playing songs. They were sonic explorers, constantly searching for new ways to express the inexpressible. That backwards wah-wah pedal became a gateway to emotions that existed beyond the reach of conventional rock music. Roger Waters later described those sessions as some of the most emotionally intense moments of his life. He said that when Gilmour began to play those seagull effects, it was as if the studio itself became transformed. The walls seemed to disappear, and suddenly they were all floating in some vast, oceanic space where time moved differently and ordinary rules no longer applied. Nick Mason, as the drummer, found that he had to completely reimagine his approach to rhythm when playing alongside these effects. The seagull cries didn't follow conventional musical timing. They flowed like natural phenomena, like wind or waves, and he had to learn to play with them rather than against them. It was a lesson in musical empathy that would influence his drumming for the rest of his career. Richard Wright, as the keyboard player, discovered that his piano and organ parts needed to create space for these otherworldly sounds. He began to think of his role not as providing harmonic support, but as creating an atmospheric foundation that would allow Gilmour's seagull effects to soar and dive with complete freedom. The interplay between Wright's keyboards and Gilmour's backwards wah-wah became one of the most emotionally powerful partnerships in rock history. Years later, when fans would ask Gilmour about the secret to creating such emotionally powerful sounds, he would often return to that moment in 1971 when he first heard those seagull cries. He would talk about the importance of staying open to accidents, of listening not just to what you're trying to create, but to what the music itself is trying to tell you.
Yet even beyond their hits and accidents lies something even more elusive, an unreleased track with a story almost no one has heard.
What if I told you that Pink Floyd, a band that practically defined artistic ambition, recorded a perfect 3-minute song, a guaranteed #1 hit, and then just buried it? It sounds crazy, right? This is the band that built The Wall, the band that took us to the dark side of the moon, a band that sold hundreds of millions of albums by proudly ignoring commercial trends. And yet, for over 50 years, one of their catchiest, most radio-friendly songs has been a complete ghost. It's become a legend, whispered about only by the most hardcore fans. The story of why this track got locked away is more revealing, and honestly, more tragic than the song itself. This is the story of the hit that got away.
Manager Peter Jenner said that the track was the one that got away, the hit they were looking for.
To really get the mystery here, you have to go back to London, 1967. It's the summer of love, and a wild new sound is erupting from the city's underground clubs. Leading this psychedelic charge is a young band called Pink Floyd, fronted by a brilliant and charismatic songwriter named Syd Barrett. In just 1 year, they went from art school darlings to bona fide pop stars. Their first 2 singles, Arnold Lane, and See Emily Play were these bizarre, catchy slices of psychedelia that somehow crashed right into the British charts. Their debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, was a game changer, a blueprint for a whole new kind of rock and roll. The pressure from their label, EMI, was massive.
Banned by Radio London because it had references to transvestitism.
Andrew King was Pink Floyd manager from 1966 to 1968.
Who in those days could enable you to improve your chart position for comparatively small expenditure.
Back then, the formula was simple. Singles become hits, and hits sell albums. Pink Floyd had delivered, but now they had to do it again. The label wanted another chart topper from Syd Barrett, and in the spring of '67, it looked like he'd done exactly that. In April, the band walked into the legendary Abbey Road studios to record what everyone thought was their next smash hit.
Syd was pretty dominant then. Syd was the lead singer, he was the lead guitarist. In any band, that's the guy that the spotlight focuses on.
The song was called She Was a Millionaire. Anyone who heard it said it was an instant classic. The band's manager at the time, Peter Jenner, was totally convinced. He later called it the one that got away, the hit they were looking for.
Peter Jenner said, if you told me without Syd they were going to be the biggest working group in the world. With Syd I could have believed it, but without Syd, where's it going to come from? Nobody else could write well. Rick could do a bit of a tune. Roger could knock off a couple of words under pressure. Waters wrote only because Syd wrote and we encouraged everybody to. Rick wrote before Roger.
The instrumental track was finished, and it was all set for release. It had everything going for it. A killer melody from the band's Golden Boy, the momentum from their recent hits, and the full support of their management. The stage was set, but the single never appeared. The song was never released. In fact, it just vanished. The official story is that the master tapes were wiped. A common practice back then to save on expensive recording tape. But that feels way too simple. You don't just erase a song with that much potential.
He was just always a friendly, humorous guy. Always a little chuckle and a laugh, you know. I liked him a lot.
The truth is a lot more complicated, and it's tied up in a series of strange decisions and growing chaos within the band. To figure out why She Was a Millionaire disappeared, you have to look at the other songs Syd Barrett was writing at the exact same time. While the label was begging for another See Emily Play, Barrett's mind was off in much stranger, darker places.
This bloke who changed the lives of everyone around.
Two other songs were recorded and prepped for a single in late 1967, Scream Thy Last Scream and Vegetable Man. These were not your average pop tunes.
To an outsider, it might have looked as if it was Syd Barrett and three other blokes.
Scream Thy Last Scream was a chaotic mess of sped-up vocals, jarring tempo shifts, and surreal lyrics, with drummer Nick Mason even taking a rare lead vocal. It was abrasive, unsettling, and a million miles from their earlier hits. Even more disturbing was Vegetable Man. The lyrics were a raw, unfiltered peek inside Barrett's fragile mental state. He apparently wrote the song by just describing what he was wearing and seeing in that moment. A man in his clothes, a vegetable man. It was so painfully personal that Peter Jenner later said he felt like it was wrong to even listen to it. He described it as watching a psychiatric patient lay their deepest vulnerabilities bare on tape. EMI was horrified. They scheduled a single release for Scream Thy Last Scream and Vegetable Man. Twice, and twice they pulled it, terrified these bizarre songs would kill the band's momentum. The band, especially Roger Waters, was also torn.
In the band, the story was always, oh, he went mad and left the group. That's all we knew about it.
There was a feeling that releasing these songs would be cruel, exploiting their friend's breakdown for the world to see. So these tracks were deemed too dark, too personal, and too commercially toxic. For decades, they only existed on bootlegs, becoming legendary symbols of a path Pink Floyd decided not to take. This is where She Was a Millionaire comes back into the picture. It was the total opposite of Vegetable Man. It wasn't dark or confessional. It was a bright, shiny pop song. So why was it also buried? The answer is a paradox. She Was a Millionaire wasn't shelved because it was too weird for the public. It was shelved because it no longer represented its creator or his band.
He was absolutely delightful at the time when it was considered fashionable to be rather cool.
As Syd Barrett's behavior got more and more erratic, the band faced a tough choice. On one side, they had these intensely personal songs about his breakdown. On the other, they had this perfectly crafted pop hit that sounded like the old Syd, the genius who got them here. Releasing She Was a Millionaire would have felt like a lie. It would have been propping up a commercial version of Syd Barrett that just didn't exist anymore, while ignoring the grim reality of his situation. The song represented a past they were tragically leaving behind. Ultimately, its disappearance was a mix of painful creative struggles and cold, hard logistics. The master tapes were probably erased, but nobody fought to save them. The band was moving on, forced to build a new identity as their founder faded. They were about to record A Saucerful of Secrets, an album that captures this very transition, one foot still in Barrett's psychedelic world, the other stepping into the grand, atmospheric rock that would define their future. She Was a Millionaire didn't fit into either of those worlds. It was a ghost of a simpler time, and for the other members, it might have been too painful a memory to keep around. Pink Floyd's history is full of these fascinating what-if moments. While She Was a Millionaire is still lost, other legendary tracks like Scream Thy Last Scream and Vegetable Man finally got an official release in 2016 on the Early Years box set. But so many more are still unheard. So what would have happened if She Was a Millionaire had been released? It's one of rock's great hypotheticals. A huge hit could have changed everything. Maybe it would have patched things up temporarily, forcing the band to keep up a pop star image a little longer. Or maybe it would have put even more pressure on Syd, making things worse. We'll never know, because the song is still a phantom. Its legacy isn't in its sound, which no one has officially heard in over 50 years, but in its absence. It tells the story of a band at a crossroads, forced to choose between fame and artistic truth while dealing with a personal tragedy. Some people believe parts of the song were later reworked by Syd for his solo track Opal, a hauntingly beautiful song in its own right. It's a faint echo of the hit that got away. The story of She Was a Millionaire reveals a core truth about Pink Floyd. From the very beginning, they were a band that cared more about emotional honesty than just making money. They refused to release Vegetable Man out of respect for their friend, and in doing so, they locked away its polar opposite too. Both songs were casualties of the same sad story. One was too real, and the other, in a way, wasn't real enough. That unreleased hit reminds us that sometimes the songs a band chooses to bury are just as important as the ones they release.
Finally, we arrive at the band's most mysterious recording ever, the one that still puzzles fans and experts alike.
On this day, a ghost walked into Abbey Road Studios. He was bald, overweight, silently brushing his teeth, and nearly unrecognizable. The band didn't realize who he was until it hit them like a brick wall. It was Syd Barrett, the founding genius of Pink Floyd. And at that very moment, they were recording a song about him for new album, Wish You Were Here.
They wanted the ferocity which Roger gives on other tracks. At the time, he just felt that he hadn't got it.
That song was Shine On You Crazy Diamond.
There was this guy standing there in a gabardine raincoat, a large bloke. And then we were all unbelievably shocked at his appearance.
This is the true story behind one of the most haunting songs in rock history. A song that's not just about loss, but about losing someone who's still breathing.
Ebullient, talented friend.
and I miss him.
This is a journey into memory, madness, and music, into a band torn by success and a friendship haunted by absence. By 1974, Pink Floyd had conquered the world. The Dark Side of the Moon wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural moment. 45 million albums sold, 741 weeks on the Billboard charts, sold-out tours. Critics praised it, fans worshipped it. But inside the band, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Success didn't bring unity, it brought silence. Each member retreated into their own world.
We do have infighting. But you mean without actually exploding?
Roger Waters, the band's bassist and increasingly dominant creative force, felt the disconnect deeply. He wasn't just tired of touring, he was disillusioned with fame, with the industry, with the very machine that was pushing Pink Floyd to greater heights.
People are prepared to accept that simple exhortation, to be prepared to stand your ground and attempt to live your life in an authentic way.
That disillusionment became the spark for their next album, an album that would look inward and backward, toward someone they had lost. The seed of the song was planted during a warm-up jam. David Gilmour began playing a slow, reflective chord progression on his acoustic guitar.
My guitar style and Sid's guitar style were not even close.
Roger Waters stopped. That melody, it sounded like a question, a longing. Waters sat down and began to write. Words poured out, not just about Sid, but about everyone and everything they'd lost. They were writing in code. Emotional code. Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage?
All the way through the making of it, we thought we were onto something that was going to do a bit better than anything we had previously done.
It's about compromise, about losing the spark, about how easy it is to trade your passion for something shinier, emptier.
When that came together with the record cover and everything at the end, we were all pretty excited.
It was about Barrett, yes. But it was about all of them. About fame, art, humanity. The song became a center of gravity for the new album, and so did its sister track, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, both orbiting around the memory of Sid. But nobody expected what would happen next.
Dave wanted a big sound, so the guitar was recorded in a different studio.
June 5th, 1975. The band was deep into mixing Shine On You Crazy Diamond at Abbey Road. It was a tribute, a farewell, a confession.
He put his amplifiers and speakers down in Studio 1, being a classical music studio, and then mic'd it from a distance. I think it comes across on the album.
And then, the past walked through the door. A large, bald man with no eyebrows stood in the hallway, brushing his teeth. Nobody recognized him. Not at first. Then someone said, "That's Sid."
Someone I haven't seen for sort of 25 years. It's very hard to make a judgment on what he thinks about anything.
They were stunned. He had changed completely, physically and mentally. He didn't understand the song was about him. He said he'd come to help with the album, offered to do guitar overdubs. They didn't know what to say. Roger Waters, upon realizing it was him, left the room and cried. This was no romanticized reunion. This was raw, painful.
I think the first time I met Sid was at a Saturday morning art class that we both attended at.
Sid stayed for about 45 minutes. Then he disappeared. Just as suddenly as he'd arrived. That moment would hang over the rest of the recording sessions like a spectre. They weren't just mourning a friend. They were witnessing the ghost of the person they once knew. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl. So simple.
We just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year.
But loaded with meaning. It wasn't just about Sid's detachment from reality. It was about Waters and Gilmore, about being stuck in a loop, repeating the same songs, the same tours, the same interviews, disconnected from themselves. Every line in the song is double-sided. Did you get you to trade your heroes for ghosts? On the surface, a reference to Barrett. On a deeper level, a question to themselves, to the audience, to everyone who's ever given up on a dream. That's the beauty of it. The song doesn't lecture, it mourns, it aches, and that's why it resonates. Because it's not just about a rock star gone mad. It's about all of us, about memory, regret, and the ever-haunting question, what if? Since its release in 1975, Wish You Were Here has become one of the most beloved songs in rock history. It's more than a track. It's a ritual, a moment of silence, a shared experience of longing. It's played at funerals, at weddings, on lonely nights when the world feels too far away. For Pink Floyd, it marked a turning point. The album it anchored would go on to sell over 13 million copies. But for the band, it was something else. A goodbye letter. A way to say what they couldn't when Sid stood in front of them that day.
Syd Barrett, one of the founding members of Pink Floyd, has died at the age of 60. A statement from the band described him as a guiding light who leaves a legacy which continues to inspire. He left the Pink Floyd in 1968 and lived as a recluse in Cambridge for 3 decades.
Syd Barrett passed away in 2006, but his presence never really left. His shadow lingers in every note, every lyric, every silent moment in Wish You Were Here. He may have disappeared from their lives, but in that song, he's always there, just beyond the veil.